Hello, this is Anna Pacheco, Santa Fe 101.com, and my guest today is Wristen Paschich, and he is an architect from New Mexico, and he's working on a lot of interesting projects. And so do I have your permission, Wristen, to record this interview?
Yes, of course.
So tell me, well, I found out about you through Marie Bleo, who's this dynamo, I call her the rock star of women builders in New Mexico. And she told me that you're doing some interesting work. But she also, I really got interested because she told me about your father, Edward. So let's start off with, you grew up in New Mexico. Tell me about your dad, how you got involved. I'm assuming for sure he had to have been an influence in your life, and that's why you're doing what you're doing today. So let's start. Tell me all about that.
Sure. Yeah, you're very right. I was born and raised in Corrales, New Mexico, a small suburb village of Albuquerque. I really grew up around the trade and design and construction from a young age. My dad and his dad were leading a company, Passage Construction back then. And so, yeah, from an early age, I was exposed to job sites, construction, really all of that. And I think that's really very much where my interest in the trade and really, sort of the art form that is architecture was born.
And so did you, as a little boy or a young boy, did you go with your dad to construction sites and like help pick up nails, or did you start working at a young age?
Yes, very much so. I mean, my first memories are from being on the job site and having some of those tasks, of course, started out with general cleanup. But yes, I from a very early age, I was on site, as it were.
And so I didn't know that your grandfather was involved in this as well. What was his name?
Jack Paschich.
And so are there like areas in Albuquerque that are like the Passage home development, or how would people like connect the dots for, this interview? And it's like, oh, I know that place in Albuquerque. Like, what would be some connecting dots there?
It really, they started in the early 70s, and the majority of their work, especially their early work, focused in Corrales. So my dad and his father, my grandfather, were responsible for a large percentage of the development that you see in Corrales even today. So a lot of the development in the Sandhills west of Loma Larga, most of those subdivisions really were their work. So
and what was your grandfather's name?
Jack Paschich.
Jack Paschich. Okay, and so he is probably passed on now, or is he still with us?
Yes, he's passed.
Well, and then so Marie was telling me that your father, that he was kind of a neat guy. I mean, he did interesting work, and he made homes out of tires, or at least partially. Tell me a little bit about that. Of course, I want to interview him directly, but just tell me a little bit about that whole element.
Right, in the early 70s, he became excited about, Adobe construction and some of the passive solar characteristics of that building technology, and how that really was sort of the baby steps into understanding what it was to build an energy efficient home. And I think it was through those initial steps of understanding what an Adobe home could be that he developed even more building technique to further the energy efficiency of homes. So they started experimenting with straw bale construction and even tire homes. So literally the exterior walls were built out of reclaimed automobile tires that were packed with earth for their the thermal density to provide insulative capacity to the home. So some pretty wild stuff for the 1980s. I would say.
And those homes they're still standing, right? They're, from what I hear, they do that up in Taos, as far as I know too. So those
right.
are pretty sturdy homes. So where did you go to school to become an architect?
Yes, I studied architecture at a small liberal arts school in upstate New York called Hobart College. And from there, I did my post-baccalaureate degree at the School of the Art Institute in Chicago, where I studied architecture and studio arts.
Okay. And you still do a lot of work in New Mexico, but now you're based out of Michigan, and your company is called Intersex Studio Design. Did I get the name right?
Yeah, just Intersect Studio, that's right.
Okay, and so so I went to your website and there were several people there. So tell me, and you all look relatively young, which is kind of exciting. So it sounds like a firm that's really you're all gonna grow old together, it sounds like. So tell me a little bit about what your firm does, and then we'll talk about specifically about some of your work in New Mexico.
Sure. Yeah, it's a very exciting time for me here in Kalamazoo, Michigan. One of the things I was sort of missing working back home, working for myself, was really that collaborative nature, working with like-minded folks. So having that opportunity here in Michigan to work with a vibrant, young, as you said, collection of people it's been really exciting, very rewarding to be a part of that type of energy. So we focus greatly on a lot of workplace design and focused on making great places for people to be their best. So we were really focused on the experience of the person, the occupant, for whatever space that we're designing. And we feel that, through a focus on what it is to be that person in that space, we're able to arrive at a final product that is, quite holistic, but sort of people-centered. And that's been, exciting and pretty rewarding to be a part of.
And do you work primarily on, residential or like businesses there? What type of buildings are you building out in Michigan?
Yeah, really all of the above. But again, maybe there's a higher level of focus on workplace. So whether that's offices or, banks, credit unions, gosh, just all of it. But yeah, a heavy focus on commercial projects. We had the great fortune this summer to work on a new design for the Latvian church here in Kalamazoo. So the first time I was able to work on a space really centered around, that religious aspect of life. So that was, yeah, really rewarding and yeah, quite unique. Just nothing I had experienced before. So a whole new standard for, yeah, design experience. So that was challenging, but yeah, really a lot of fun.
And since you grew up in New Mexico, and the architecture here in New Mexico and the Southwest is definitely different. I'm assuming I've not been to Michigan, but I'm assuming it's way different. So what's it like? I mean, how has that been like? Does your having the experience you've had in New Mexico, does that add to what you're already doing, or was just like, or did you have to learn a whole new other concept, because I'm sure they don't have Adobes out there. So
Yeah,
tell me a little bit about that.
yeah, really just broadening my scope of work is what I've had the opportunity to do here. Yes, there is a different standard for construction, just primarily due to the different climate, so it's specifically due to that. But yeah, it's certainly different. But I would say I've just been able to broaden my toolbox, as it were.
And you say you're working on businesses there, so I'm assuming you're working like on multi-story businesses. We don't have a lot of that here. So
True.
what's that like? I mean, like, what's it like to build, usually, again, we don't have a lot of tall buildings here in New Mexico. So what's
Yeah,
that like?
it's true. Moving from the West, where land is cheap or cheaper, and more space to grow horizontally. Um, yeah, focusing or working in a region where space is at a premium, so we're working more vertically, presents a different set of design criteria or challenges, but with that just comes new and exciting results, so really being able to consider or think about quality of light on multi-story buildings, what that looks and feels like, how that translates to the sensory experience of the occupant. That's been a new set of guidelines that I have to consider. And it's been fun, to sort of be forced into a different pragmatic, you know, set of guidelines.
And so why Kalamazoo? What's going on in Kalamazoo that you ended up there?
Yes, well, it was really born through a fantastic offer that my wife received. She, about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years now, received her MFA in dance and choreography from the University of New Mexico. And she started to really look for job opportunities, job openings, and did not expect for it to present itself so quickly. And really, she had approached a job opportunity here at WMU, Western Michigan University, as just an opportunity for her to test her interview skills and see what this whole process was to be applying for university positions. But lo and behold, a week after her interview, she was offered a spot, and gosh, we did not expect it. We hoped for it, but didn't expect it to happen so fast. And, once we really started digging into the offer and the tertiary benefits that the university was offering, we thought, goodness, we probably shouldn't say no to this. And so yeah, here we are in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
And you were saying that you're working with other like-minded people, but in New Mexico, did you work alone? It sounded like you had your own practice here.
Yes, certainly. I had my own practice. I had a robust and confident set of subcontractors that I worked closely with and had great relationships with. But, those moments were, few and far between, or it was, a handful of minutes and hours in each day where we were collaborating, maybe on site, problem solving or addressing any issues that came up. But I guess what I was lacking was the collaboration, the moments in actual design where you're putting pen to paper. So that was a very private and solitary moment for me when I was doing the actual creation of these spaces. And certainly I still look back on those with fond memories, but being able to inject some collaborative energy in that time frame or in that process, which I'm able to do now, has been really, really rewarding.
So I know that you're still working on at least one home in New Mexico. Do you have other projects going on here in the state?
Well, certainly open to it through the current times, through this pandemic. I've been fortunate enough to have the experience of the firm I'm working with now, who even before the pandemic had worked greatly in a remote setting. They've worked really all over the country, even before these Zoom meetings were a regular occurrence. So with their experience, they've really shown me the way of how we can effectively design and work remotely. So I have great confidence in doing that here in the future. So to answer your question, yes, I hope that there's many projects on the horizon for me and for my company to be working in New Mexico into the future.
And you mentioned your toolbox early on here. Do you things that you know about architecture in the Southwest, has that helped your colleagues back in Michigan say, oh, well, look at that, or wow, or I didn't, have there been any of those wow moments for them that they had no idea? Because again, I think it's got to be very different if they've not been out here in terms of design and things. Has your toolbox brought to that whole collaborative effort?
Yeah, very much so. And luckily in New Mexico, have the opportunity, or we're blessed with plentiful sunshine and sunny days. So designing with the sun in mind is sort of second nature for designers from the West and the Southwest and New Mexico. So coming here, I had a much greater focus on that element, the quality of light, shadow play, the path of the sun through different times of the year. That's something that has been a great focus of mine. And I think I've certainly impressed my cohorts with my attention to detail and focus on the sun and how that interacts with architecture. So that's definitely been a tool or a sort of practice that I've brought to my cohorts here.
And I don't know a whole lot about building, but through these interviews, I'm at least grasping these little terms and things in term like, so green building, that's a big deal here in New Mexico, because and we have, like you said, plenty of sunshine. So of course solar works into that, and then different things like your father has made homes from tires and that type of thing. Is green building a term that's used all over the country? I mean, what type of green building can you do in Michigan where it's cold and I'm sure the sun doesn't shine as it doesn't shine 330 days a year like it does here in New Mexico? What type of green building can you incorporate there?
Yeah, great question. Yes, green building, the energy efficiency at large in architecture and design is a nationwide and probably worldwide focus. So really, it's about harnessing. It's about controlling energy. So the more insulative you can make a structure, the more airtight, the higher the performance of the home, meaning energy efficiency, energy loss to the outside. Where you insulate and protect footings and walls. Those are all considerations that we make on a daily basis. Even going to the level of detail of rainwater, water runoff, how much water we shed to the streets, and where does that water go? Does it make its way back to the aquifer? Those are all considerations that we have to make on a daily basis, and that step by step is impacting the sort of performance or energy efficiency of the home, how green it is. Every one of those decisions you make influences, the structure's performance. So while maybe it's not we're as worried about solar gain here in this particular region, we have our focus on other aspects that require greater focus. Maybe just the extreme cold, snow and ice that we have to deal with. So.
And then, well, so pardon my ignorance, but in your area of the country now, do they have solar panels? I mean, does that type of energy exist out there? Because I mean, again, I don't know how sunny it is, but does that exist out there?
It certainly does. It's I don't want to say less effective, but
it's not as vibrant, or it's not as strong or robust. Robust is the word I'm thinking of. It can't be as robust because you're not being pounded with sunshine 330 days a year. So, but that does exist.
Oh, for sure. And I think one of the sectors of that we have our eye on, and we're really sort of waiting for the technology to catch up with, is that of battery technology and storage technology. So meaning, how can we capture and store that solar energy, what little we may have? As the battery technology and storage technology improves, we'll be able to harness and rely more greatly on that solar technology. So really the panel technology has sort of gotten ahead of the storage technology, and we just really need that to catch up. But companies like Tesla, for instance, they're developing solar panel shingle technology. So it's really the entire roof now can become a solar catchment array. So technology like that is really going to advance it. But what we need, sort of step in step or in tandem, is the storage technology.
Okay. In terms of your work as an architect, do you have a portfolio of say 5 or 6 different homes that you've designed? And so if somebody rang you up and said, I'd like you to design a home for me, do you say, well, I've got, these 6 types of homes that I've already done. Would these interest you? Do you have that type of portfolio? I don't know how this works, but do you have that?
Certainly, got a personal portfolio, and maybe while I wouldn't want to say it's these are model homes and we can build this one for you, really like to consider it sort of visioning, meaning inspiration, and
And you can always switch it around, but people have an idea, like, that sounds, I kind of like that, but could we add this? Or that
Exactly.
type of thing.
Yep.
And then what is your time frame? If somebody were watching this interview and they're moving to New Mexico and for whatever reason they want you to design their home, what would your time frame be like? Is it 18 months or 2 years? If somebody wants something that's maybe not an exact replica of something you've already created, but like a version of it?
Yeah, so I would think 18 months is a nice round number for considering design, permitting, and construction time. Yes, it's always hard to say. Just
So you're saying the entire home can be built in 18 months, not just your design work. You could get.
Oh, for sure.
And then do you still stay in contact with people here that that if somebody were moving here, because a lot of people are moving to New Mexico now, they would pick you as the architect, and you could say, well, I typically have done work with my subcontractors in New Mexico are X, Y, and so basically you could provide that whole network for them, so they're not starting with an architect in Kalamazoo, and then they have to find the contractor who would then build it. Is that how you would work? You would recommend people?
Yes, and I've maintained my license in New Mexico currently. So yeah, it could be a very seamless process.
And it'd be a nice way for you to come home to see your dad once in a while. We're at the end of the interview. Is there anything else you want to, I'm assuming that on your website you have pictures of the houses and things you've done, so that's fine, and we'll have all that information there. But is there anything you want to end with in terms of just your work in New Mexico as an architect, the things to stay away from, or just, I'm telling everybody now because I'm having to replace my roof again. It's like, stay away from flat roofs. But do you have any advice? What should people avoid, or what do you recommend for a home in New Mexico?
Gosh, I mean, really, I guess let's stay, on the positive side of things. Really, it's just about what a beautiful and powerful landscape that we have to offer in New Mexico. So I would say it's really just about harnessing that very specific and beautiful site, and trying to incorporate as much of that, the natural beauty that New Mexico has to offer, into your daily life, your daily routine, trying to capture those special moments from each window, each point of access, point of entry, really trying to think of the home as a 360-degree aperture for which you can capture these stunning New Mexico views. So really
go ahead, I'm sorry.
Just to say that, it's such a beautiful and iconic landscape. So really, just try to harness it at every step.
But I was going to say that just probably in all of your work, whether it's in Michigan or here, is that energy efficiency, that should always be like a mantra for people in this day and age, because as time goes on, that's going to become all the more important. Don't you think, in terms of our resources and our dwindling resources, and God knows what's going to happen with climate change, that is being as energy efficient as possible. That would be like a good, just a good format, or a good for people to follow.
I totally agree. And each sector of the building trade is making it easier and easier to be an energy efficient home, now versus 10, 15 years ago. So it's easier than it's ever been. So, you shouldn't really, no home buyer or home builder should see it as a hurdle anymore. It's just, it's really an opportunity.
Yeah, and it's becoming more mainstream. So it's not like a luxury, it's becoming more mainstream.
That's right.
Well, great. Well, I want to thank you for your time. Do you want to close with anything here?
No, I appreciate the opportunity. It's great to connect with folks back in New Mexico. I certainly miss you all, and hope to see them soon.
Well, I'm hoping that you're going to get some jobs through this. Listen, thank you so much.
Thanks so much.